Alright, 6th graders, today we are going to look at the percent of a number. By the end of this lesson, you want to be able to find the percent of a number. Let's start with a quick review. Remember that all fractions, decimals, and percents can be substituted for each other. So they're interchangeable depending on what form you would like to use. When making calculations, though, we only use fractions and decimals. We never actually use percents in a problem. It might be given as a percent, but we usually convert it when we're doing the math. We can use percent equivalence to find the percent of a number. Okay? So for example, if I'm looking for 30% of 50, I can either change 30% to a fraction or a decimal. What we're looking at here is that of. That of is always going to mean multiplication. So we're looking at this, 30% is the same as 30 out of 100, which is the same as 3 out of 10. What I'm going to do there is I can take 3 out of 10 times 50, and remember 50 is really 50 over 1. I can either reduce before I go, or I can multiply straight across. 3 times 50 would be 150, 10 times 1 is 10. 150 divided by 10 is just going to give us an answer of 15. If I wanted to use a calculator, I could change my 30% to the 0.3, multiply that by 50, and you would still get an answer of 15. So like I said before, remember that of indicates multiplication. So to find the percent of a number, we are going to change the percent into its equivalent decimal. That's probably the one I use the most often, just because changing it to a decimal is pretty slick and easy, and then really easy to use a calculator. And then we're just going to multiply the decimal by the number that we're looking at. Okay? So let's look at this first example, 9% of 80. So if I change 9%, or the decimal point is to the right, so we're going to move it 2 spaces to the left. So this is really the same as 0.09. You're going to take that and multiply it by 80. And we can go ahead and use a calculator for that. So when I calculate it out, I end up getting an answer of 7 2/10. So 7 2/10 is 9% of 80. So why don't you go ahead and pause the video and see if you can try the next two on your own. Since we're starting with 0.5%, remember we're moving it back 2 spots. This actually becomes 0.005. So we're going to take that, multiply it by 36, and we get an answer of 18/100ths. So 0.5% or 0.5% of 36 would only be about 18/100ths. 200%, once again, look at that decimal point, we're going to move it back 2 spots. So it ends up becoming 2 times 24 ends up being 48. Which makes sense because if you had 100%, that would be all of it, so it would be 24. 200% is going to be twice that, so it's going to be 48. Now let's look at using some percents in some real-world contexts. The estimated world population in 2001 was 6,157 million people, or in other words, there was over 1 billion people. About 40% of these people were 19 or younger. So we want to know what was the approximate number of people that were 19 or younger to the nearest million. Well, 40% of the people, and there were 6,157 million people. So to do this, we're looking for 40% of 6,157 million. I'm going to change my 40% to a decimal, which is going to be 0.4, times the 6,157. We get an answer of 2,462.8, but since they ask us to round to the nearest million, 0.8 tells us we round up. So the answer we would actually use would be 2,463 million people were underneath the age of 19 in 2001. Now I want you to go ahead and pause the video and see if you can figure out this last one all on your own. My bill at a restaurant was $15.75 and I want to leave a 20% tip, which is pretty typical of what you would probably leave at a restaurant. I want to know how much money I would tip the server. So 20% of $15.75. So 20% becomes 0.2 times our $15.75 is going to be $3.15. So that's about what I should leave as a tip for my server.